Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of To The Point Podcast. I'm Rachael Lyon, here with my co-host, John Knepher. John, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Rachael.
So you've got some travels coming up soon, right? I'm kind of jealous. I don't have any upcoming travel or holiday plans.
Oh, yes, off to go see my daughter away at school. So it'll be a nice little trip over to Spain.
Spain?
Yes.
Will you be my dad? Can I go to school in Spain?
Maybe so.
Amazing, amazing. I've been to Barcelona once, and I got to tell you, the culture there, all day long, they really know what they're doing. So without further ado, though, I do want to introduce today's guest. Very excited to welcome to the podcast Shane Tews. She's a non-resident senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a public policy think tank dedicated to defending human dignity, expanding human potential, and building a freer and safer world. At AEI, she focuses on digital economy issues, including AI, cybersecurity, privacy and data protection, next generation networking, IoT, international internet governance, international information and communications technology, and emerging technologies. She's also president of Logan Circle Strategies, a strategic advisory firm, and she hosts the Explain to Shane podcast, which I highly recommend you go to the October 2nd episode that features a discussion on privacy and governmental surveillance, which was part of the Technology Policy Institute's Aspen Forum 2025 event. Welcome, Shane.
Thanks, Rachael. John, where are you going in Spain?
We are going all over the place. We start in Madrid and then we go down to Granada.
Oh, fabulous. I have an aunt who lives outside of Granada. It's lovely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I was in Zaragoza. There's a huge engineering, there's a lot, Amazon's putting a lot of effort into Spain, which I love. And there's a lot of stuff that until you get there, you don't know it's there, and it's amazing. So have a great time.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Well, let's dig into your stuff. Everything Rachael just said. You have such a broad background here. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. If you could start out, maybe tell us what have you seen in the evolution of all of this technology and telecom policies since you've been involved for so long? How have things evolved? What are the current challenges?
So now that everything's AI, I actually bought a new set of golf clubs, and they had said on the top of them they were AI enabled. I had no idea that worked. But everybody's in on it, including Callaway. So I like it. To me, is a little bit of a redo. A lot of us who've been in this space for a long time. I was advent of the internet, like 2001. I stepped in and was trying. I understood the Internet Commerce Clause because of a previous job very well, and so I was hired by a lovely company, VeriSign, that runs .com and .net, and at the time still had .org. And trying to explain to regulators, legislators, how this internet thing was going to work across then just the state borders, which we're actually having that state issue again with AI, and then eventually to international waters. And spent a tremendous amount of time with the Internet Governance Society. Internet Governance Forum was created during all this. I've been to over 50 internet communications on assigned names and numbers, known as ICANN meetings that were early in on this. So a lot of this for me is having just an adjacent discussion to discussions I've had in the past. I was just invited to go to the House of Representatives in Arizona, and they said, would I come in and talk about AI and elections? And I said, sure, yeah. And so I sent some draft testimony in, and then they came back with a question and said, can you just explain how we need to protect everyone in Arizona against artificial intelligence? Is one of the I was like, well, that's a broader topic, but why not? I'll try tackling that for you. So I have that to look forward to on November 14th. So it's really just like I love technology, and I'm a huge advocate of saying that you need to regulate towards an outcome, not the tech. Because as soon as you put something hard in the tech, we were just talking about the challenges of the government making a decision, like you have to use a certain platform for something. And a lot of times those are arbitrary decisions. Somebody's made a decision, they had no idea how long that was going to stay in place, and now we're all loopholing around it. And it's a similar situation. Where are we in the stage of AI? We're dealing with people that are fear mongering, which isn't really unnecessary because most of it has not actually been applied. There's so many cool things that it's doing. I do see the challenge when I think about like you mentioned your daughters in school, and like how do you teach them the discipline of having, ethics around AI? You should use it as a tool. Everyone should be using AI to the extent they're using it as a tool. It is not a replacement for a lot of the things that we're doing, but it's understanding the different, iterations of the technology that's being used and the tools that are being handed to you. So we have a lot of really interesting, nuanced policy discussions ahead of us.
We're at an interesting time. You mentioned AI, you mentioned regulation. I was reading an article on the AI website, and it was
There's an
talking
AI website.
a,
Would you tell me what it is?
AEI. Yeah, no,
Oh, AEI.
AEI.org.
Yes,
Sorry.
AI.org
Sorry.
is, thank you. I was like, there's a secret AI website. Damn.
It
Yeah,
was,
no way.
the author was talking about, in the global leaderboard of technology, 20 of the 25 world's most valuable companies are in the US, and then Europe has one entry. And
I
then
wrote that blog.
there you go. Yeah, exactly. And it cites a quote from a German bank, right?
Yeah.
This Europe is a global pioneer in regulating AI. Meanwhile, other regions are world leaders in the development and profitable application of AI, which is really interesting. So how do you balance innovation, regulation, and maintaining digital trust? Like, how does that come about?
Yeah, Rachel, that's a really good question. As this, as somebody who spent a lot of time reading regulatory stuff, the Draghi report, which I think came out now 2 years ago, is Mario Draghi was, this economist, did a lot of work in Italy, and he came out with a report that said we need to change our banking system in Europe to help us have a better, chance of being in the technology space. That isn't a native, immediate thought for a lot of people. Like, what does banking have to do with tech innovation? And his point is they are still working in a very old school way of financing, where our VC capital, a lot of the things that were really kind of came out of Silicon Valley, which have been emulated in many other areas, are a real, we're willing to take risk. We're willing to see the end goal of where you're going with this. And, it's the 1 out of 10 hit, but they're in a financial situation where that one can be the unicorn, and they can absorb the cost of the others that may not come along as quickly. The European system's not designed for that. And I know that seems like a weird answer sometimes to people who are like, what does that have to do with technology? It means that they're not able to fund some of these amazing ideas that they might have in Europe. What they end up doing is they come to the United States. And that's good for us, but that's not good for this idea of wanting this balance, especially as we're having all these trade conversations right now, and wanting to have we call it kind of the ally stack. There's this idea of having, an American first network operation stack, but we know that we really need to broaden that to bring in others. And when people think of Europe, we know about, ASML, that is, the lithograph that, sorry, I have to edit that, the lithography
Yeah.
machines that are making the designs that make the chips. And, they have a lovely agreement that was going to be the one place to do it, which is starting to unravel. People think of Nokia, but not for the reasons that they used to. They think they still make phones. They don't. And so you're like, SAP software, where am I bringing Europe into the loop? And it's not that I want to not have European partners. I realize, the digital sovereignty is really big right now. People want to feel like they have some homegrown stake in the game, but we need to help them build that homegrown stake. It's just not there in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and just a side note, John knows that I love these tangential questions too. When it comes to regulation as well, I guess coming back to the United States, one of the interesting things, right, kind of the state by state approach versus the federal, right, regulation approach, and kind of how do you see a way forward there as well? I mean,
It's I always say things are not that different in the digital world than they are
yeah,
in the analog world. So if there's already a law in place and it's about consumer rights or consumer harms, that law applies. We
right.
don't need brand new laws for artificial intelligence. And most of the things that I look at, when you unbraid them, you're like, that's already illegal. That's true of so many things. You say, I don't need a second law that says because this was come across on my mobile device that it can just apply to my mobile. No, if it's wrong, it's wrong.
Right.
My colleague over at our street, Adam Thier, writes about this and is really my go-to person. He spends a tremendous amount of time on it. And it's just reinforcing, like, we have very good, solid laws, and let's look at where the delta is. Where are we concerned that there's going to be things that might come through the loop because the old analog written, the language that was written during analog times may not feel like it ports into a digital environment and a digital economy. So let's address that. And that can be also, as you know, there's no real rule of order anymore around here, I feel like, but that you used to do that in different types of language that would be more amenable and move forward. So it didn't have to be hardened in stone, and everybody in the legal area is trying to go back and put their imprint onto something that really wasn't designed for a digital era. So looking at things again is helpful, but I think we also need to really recognize that a lot of these things that are consumer driven are already on the books, and we should honor that.
So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of these things are very core and well understood, but what things make these challenges like so persistent overall? Are these technical or policy issues that are kind of continuing to make it an issue?
Well, there's a couple things. One thing is the internet itself made things work very fast, and then we put a bunch of devices in people's hands and made it work faster. And because we still are having Moore's law, things keep working better and faster. And I always say that it just makes the human existence even more a mirror into what we look at as, let's take social media, for example. I deal with a lot of the challenges right now where we have a lot of people wanting to do very specific things on child online safety. There are so many tools that I wrote in. I just got tired of people telling me, well, they should do this, they should do that. I go, they did. And it's like, this goes to this conversation we were having before we were recording. It's the toggle button. There's a toggle in there somewhere that says, move this. I don't want to see that. Block this. Now, it takes a little educating yourself sometimes. So I wrote a report, which I plan on doing a new one in January. I'll do an update of all the different ways that you can use parental guidance, or something that if you are concerned about something you do not want to see or you don't want to be available to. And it doesn't necessarily always say it has to be underage. It's just like, I just don't want to see this. Now we're seeing a lot of the states want to do things that are very direct to being age appropriate. The problem there is you have to gather more information to know less information. And as we know about data, once you gather it, you've got it. And you can say that I'm going to disaggregate it and it's going to dissolve itself. And I hope that the honorable organizations that say that do that, but most of them don't. And most third-party aggregators sell all that information. So we're really picking, and what a honeypot, right? That you're designed for all these, the challenge ultimately with children's data is it's really clean. And so it gets onto the dark web, and they're able to use it to, create credit card profiles. You find out when you apply for college that you have a home loan. You're like, when did I get a home loan?
Exactly.
Because it's all this information gets used. I mean, I run across it. I did last week. I was looking up something in DC on my residence, and it had 8 working email addresses for me with a percentage of how well they worked, and 2 of them absolutely were not mine. They were something that somebody had made up, and they had a 40% operating fee that it would work. And I was like, this isn't a DC public thing I just looked up on the internet.
Right.
So you get in this real kind of imbalance of like, well, I believe in data privacy. Privacy is a challenge for me. I think privacy is a feeling, and it's hard to regulate privacy, the thought of it. Data protection, I am all for. So I get all these people getting angry about information, especially the AI and how fast it's going to come along. I'm like, wait, let's just stop for a second. What did I just look up in a public, area in a DC?
Yes.
All I had to do was ask the question and it showed up. That has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. That has to do with, what information should be available when. And then I have to go back because I'm old enough. I'm like, it was the white pages, right? They used to just drop them on your front doorstep, and so we haven't really corrected our whole thought process about what information should be available when and where, and which is why I ultimately land on the fact that we're really ready for a national data protection / privacy bill. I think we needed to figure out. Europe right now is really been dragging us to the directions of which they find interesting, but they're also very. They're not very even in how they apply it. And then we have California on the other side, which is doing, similar situation where it's becoming our de facto data protection bill. So it's really time to really think all these things through.
I agree. I don't know, John, the last time you Googled yourself, but just for grinsies, from time to time, I was kind of astounded. It's my name, my phone number, my date of birth, my address, my age. And I'm like, wait a minute, y'all. I don't want this information out there. And, but why is it free and publicly available? That was what was astounding to me. Because I never put my actual birth date when I register for anything. Does anybody? Really?
Well, now we have the challenge of that information being available. Every time you have to fill out a form or something, I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of my mom's banking situations, as my parents get older, and how easy it is to get access to things is, you're like, where is there not a barrier to this? But then it brought me to a second thing is I can't put two-factor authentication on her phone. She'll never be able to figure that out.
Right.
So now I'm trying to figure out how do I manage that from my end, but not take away her dignity in
Exactly.
managing that. So and I can't get a parallel phone because they're worried about me being a scammer. So I've got to I'm still figuring all that stuff out. But then it brings you to. Then I was thinking about two-factor authentication, and there's advent now that we're hearing about, all these agentic AI uses, and I'm like, well, what's going to happen when all the agents? I want to plan a trip to Scotland over, I don't know, New Year's, let's say, and I'm going to give all these agents this information, and it's supposed to be my password and well, what am I going to do about the two-factor auth? I really don't know. I mean, like, am I going to have to just disable it while these agents do this? And then I'm going to have a group of agents, according to OpenAI,
Right.
said on ChatGPT, they're going to use bookings.com, and a bunch of people that say I use them as the platform on this. Is it just the lowest common denominator of what all those agents do? I mean, I'm very curious part of me is
Yes.
I'm very permissive and I'll run, not walk to
Yeah.
figure this stuff out. But at the same time, I think we need to think this through not only from the technical perspective, but all those other layers of the data protection and privacy. Make sure that we
Yes.
have consumers in mind when we do that.
Is that the trade-off though, Shane? I mean, ultimately it's, hey, we want life to be easy, so let's just let them have everything, all our information, they have it anyway. I mean, it's, I think of generations that have grown up with social media and their whole life is out there. I mean, it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
everything, like where they live and their dog's name and all of these things. And is it too late to pull things back? I guess is what I'm asking,
They
Shane.
have a totally different attitude about it. When they go out at night, I have lots of cute 30-something friends that I chat with all the time, and they all just they put themselves on their Find My on Friday night so they can find each other at bars. And I'm like, if you thought that through, like, and do you make sure you turn that off at a certain point? And they don't seem to. That doesn't matter to them. But
Right.
there's other things they'll be like really hardened on that they think is like some idiot move. And when I think through it, I'm trying to explain to them like, there's a 1978 regulation that says, they're like, oh, just stop. So yeah, there is a bit of that, where they are very permissive on giving out their information, and we have to think about that as we're building these
Right.
rules because they're going to be like, sure, and we have to make sure that that isn't just again another like honeypot of like all kinds
Exactly.
of data they can scrape up, and somebody's doing bad things with your information.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about another attribute of this. You kind of brought it up a little bit in our pre-chat on encryption. So like I remember the old days when the whole Clipper chip thing was the event of the day. What are your opinions now for what level of encryption should be mandatory, and what's your opinion on government backdoors in encryption strategies?
The idea of a government backdoor is insane. Once you build a backdoor for anything, and I know England really, the UK wanted this and was, trying to do this, dark order with Apple that they couldn't make public until somebody else made it public, and it got out. That there's no such thing as a backdoor just for one thing. Once it's there, all the bad guys are just going to hammer on it until they can open it. So that just alone is just an idiotic idea. But luckily, we are not seeing it being replicated. I was mentioning that this lovely gentleman, Jeff Green, who used to be at CISA, was the one who was saying during I believe it was Salt Typhoon, that what do you do when all of your information you just found out? And this was really directly to government officials who were finding out that all this information had been scraped by using a government mandated portal that the carriers had, and China had sucked up all this information about them, and they're like, "What do we do?" And they're like, "Encryption. You need to encrypt your data because even if they have it at that point, at least right now, you can't actually see what those messages are, and almost all of our messenger services have that. So the idea that the UK was trying to do is say, well, just take that off in the UK. It doesn't work that way. And a lot of times, the one reason why people were using certain ones, like Signal, like Apple Messenger was one they were going after, but Signal is really big because of that. Both WhatsApp, and I know WhatsApp is encrypted, and I believe that Facebook Messenger is as well as is encrypted. They're trying to. I was just talking to them. How are they going to manage that with their AI? And they're really making sure that encryption continues to be a priority because they just want people to feel safe when they're using this information. I mean, imagine 99% of the stuff that people say in messages is really not that relevant to other people.
Right.
But there are times when it is a matter of safety or security, or just that information was meant to be private and not shared. So we need to really think about that. So I have very strong feelings about encryption, John.
So do I. I think we're on the same page here.
Okay,
That's right.
good.
Encryption is your friend. That's right. I
Right.
think is what you said. Encryption is your friend.